My name is Bryce Miller. I'm with Fire Containment Training Services. I want to thank you for taking the time to check out this video on FIRESTOP inspections by code officials. We're also going to be talking about FIRESTOP special inspectors and talk about how they fit into the whole picture also. So I do need to apologize to you that did notice on the last newsletter. We were going to be doing a video, a demo of a actual code official doing and providing FIRESTOP inspections and showing you some of the information that we're going to share with you today. A method of FIRESTOP inspections that we've found has worked really well for code officials around the U.S. And so a lot of you might be asking, what's the big deal? Why do we really need to be looking at this FIRESTOP inspections? So we actually did a survey through ICC, International Code Council, years ago, and this is through the certification department. And I actually was asked to be the chairman of a committee to form the questions for this survey that went out to all of membership for ICC. We had around 7 questions, and these 7 questions were related to, are you really inspecting per the code? And we have found through that survey that over 90% of the code officials were not inspecting fire stopping appropriately. And I actually feel it's even, the average is probably more like 95%. And the reason I say that is I've actually had the opportunity to train code officials throughout the U.S. I've actually been in every state except for Hawaii. And we have found that, maybe 2 or 3% of the code officials out there are actually doing a proper inspection of fire stopping. It just does not happen very often at all. So we've come up with some methods that we think might work for those code officials out there. So ICC's done a good job. We actually, in the 2012 code, there was a significant code adoption there in fire stopping. And hopefully you're all familiar with this because you now can require that high-rise buildings or category 3 and 4 buildings can actually require FIRESTOP special inspections. And one of the things that they can do too is they have to comply with an ASTM inspection standards. So these FIRESTOP inspection standards are excellent. They actually provide the percentage that they're supposed to do. The FIRESTOP special inspector has to do a certain method. They could do destructive or visual inspection. And so this is why these standards are excellent for them. Now, we as code officials, is this something we need to be doing per the standard? And is that something that as code officials we should meet these standards? No, you know that. We are the HJ, we're the authority having jurisdiction, and we decide the percentage that we're going to be looking at and the number of systems, the number of joints and penetrations and so forth. But that is one of the things you really do not have to do, is you don't have to follow these ASTM standards. So why is this really difficult for us as code officials? Well, one of the main reasons is, if you think about it, there's no other area in the code that has to deal with all the trades on your construction site. So think about it, there's no other inspection like that. And when you have to deal with every one of the trades on these FIRESTOP inspections, it can be really difficult. Now, once in a while, you're going to get single source FIRESTOP contractors, and that means, it's going to make it a lot easier for you. But about 80% of the time, it's going to be all the trades that you're going to be dealing with, okay? The other reason it makes it difficult for us as code officials is we're very limited on time. I mentioned about the visual inspection. A visual inspection is just what it sounds like. You should be taking that tested listed system and watching them install a system. And that we as building and fire code officials, we do not have time to sit there and watch them do that. Now there's another one, and that's the destructive test. They say, well, a destructive test is what it sounds like too. A destructive test is you tear that system apart, that penetration, and then after you're done, you have to put it back together. And but again, most of us as code officials do not feel comfortable taking out somebody else's tested listed system that they just installed. It's just not going to happen. The last reason, and it really makes it difficult for us as code officials, is most plans examiners do not include this FIRESTOP submittals in their plans, and it makes it difficult. There's a lot of areas that we really need to, especially in the area of joints, we need to have the plans examiners cover a lot of areas before you go out and do that inspection of the fire stopping. So that's why it really makes it tough. Now, one of the things is we've come up with a method that we think might work a little bit better for you as code officials. And it's this two-step process. And the first step is you would ask them to, before they put the caulk and spray in, that you want them to go ahead and have all the fill material in there, and you know, that they have it all laid out for you. And we would call it the fill material or annular space inspection, okay? And that's a first step. So you go out there and you'll check the annular space, you'll check the joints for the nominal joint width. And if you haven't been to our sessions, most of you don't know what I'm talking about there, but you need to be doing that because we need to be covering the movement of these joints. So these are the kind of things that we need to be looking at. And for the first step. Now there's a second step then. That second step is we go out after they have put the caulk and spray in. And then, yes, you're right, even both steps, we have to do minimal type of destructive work to be able to get to it. But again, we cover that in our sessions. It's really not that difficult. You as code officials can do it. So this is a two-step process. Now, another one we need to think about, though, is what about those preformed devices? Those devices that go in at one time. How do we inspect those? That is really tough to do in a way. So what we've to come up with there is say, okay, why don't you lay out all those collars and all those preformed pass-through devices and so forth. You just lay them out where they're supposed to go. Again, very important. You need to have your tested listed system right there. Whenever you're looking at any of these systems, that whole tested listed system is there. And it's not that difficult to interpret these tested listed systems. Once you get used to it, it's very simple. You'll know the different, how to evaluate these penetrations and these joints and the curtain walls. You'll know how to do it. But again, these pass-through devices and these, collars and these areas that are, preformed devices, the way we need to inspect those is at that first step, you need to go out there during the annular space inspection, and you need to say, okay, I want you to lay out all of these preformed devices. Before you install them, I want to be able to see them with the tested listed system there. Now again, we as code officials, are we going to be looking at very many of these systems out there? No. It's just like the first two steps that we went through. You do not have to do a lot of these. Just every so often, what this does is at least it gets their attention. They know that we as code officials are going to be out there. Remember, we're just checking agencies. We don't have time to be looking at everything at that point, okay? Now, there is a point, though, where you do need to look at everything, is once they've installed everything, you need to go out there and, like these preformed devices, you're not going to be doing any kind of destructive work on the preformed devices. Most of the time, you just want to be able to, again, look at the tested listed system, make sure they're looking okay. At that step, that second step, that's when you really do need to look, though, at all of the FIRESTOP systems. It's not that difficult, and as you're walking through the building, you're probably, if you're like me, we were combination inspectors for many years, and you would do, I did mechanical, plumbing, and framing at the same time, and you just walk through, and that's the way you would do it. And you would just be watching, though, for all of those, joints, penetrations, and curtain walls. You want to make sure they meet the requirements too. So let's review this a little bit. Again, visual inspections, we know we don't have time to do that, to stand there and watch them install it. Destructive test, again, not comfortable as code officials. So we have this two-step process that we're recommending to you. Hopefully, I know it may not make sense, but again, you can attend one of our training sessions and it'll all come together there. And it'll make a lot more sense to you, especially as we go through the details of the penetrations, joints, and perimeter containment. So there's another one, though. We need to think about this one. And this is a little touchy because the FIRESTOP contractors, International FIRESTOP, the FCIA, they are basically the group of single source FIRESTOP contractors. They got a very good organization. The FCIA, I was at one of their meetings, And we were in a big circle one time talking to about 15, 20 of them. And they were asking me a lot of questions about, how to deal with building and fire departments, things like that. And I had to ask them a question. I said, you guys need to help me out. You need to know something. We as code officials, we don't feel comfortable digging into somebody else's work, and we don't have time to do the visual inspections. So if we came up to you and asked you, hey, would you be able to do a destructive test on these, certain some penetrations and some joints? And again, I'm not going to be picking out a lot of them. But if you as an installer, would you do that for me and do the destructive test while I'm sitting there looking at this tested listed system? I want to make sure that everything in there is per this tested listed system. Would you do that for me? I'll never forget the reaction. Almost every one of their eyes were just like, wow, that would be great. And I've talked to a lot of tradespeople, and if they are excited about, the installation that they did, they're open to doing this. So again, that's another option that you can do, so you don't have to touch anything. Have them do all the destructive work. Or again, I know I did not mention in a two-step process how to do some destructive work. I just told you it was minimal. You could have that person do that destructive work also. And again, one of the things you have to remember, they have to be there anyway when we're doing these inspections, because they have to repair that system, before you leave and you are able to look it over. So again, these are just some of the recommendations in this area. I've also got a recommendations of steps that you may need to take as a building department or a fire department. My recommendation is, if some of this is kind of new to you, please try to attend one of our sessions first. But I would really sit down with your building department, the next staff meeting you have, and really ask them, hey, what is our policy and procedure? What's everybody doing in this area of fire stopping? And try to come up with something that's consistent within your building and fire department. It really is something we need to do. So I know a lot of you may not even feel comfortable. One of the things that a lot of code officials around the country are doing is they're saying, in our building department, we're going to, anything over 2 stories, we're going to require FIRESTOP special inspectors. Or another one might say, we're going to do an occupant load of certain much, over 100. That's going to be done by a FIRESTOP special inspector. And it's really great. We have this discussion during our training on this. And so that's something that I'd highly recommend that you consider. Is again, you as a building department, you do those smaller projects. Larger projects, take care, let those FIRESTOP special inspectors take care of that. He says, well, then I've got to amend my code and everything. No, you don't. If you check 1705.1, you will see it's pretty clear in regards to the fact that if you want to require this, and you set it up as a policy though, and stick to that policy, you have the right to do that without amending the code. Check out 1705.1, unusual in its nature, and you can go through a lot of, it's talking about fire stopping. And so if you read that whole section, you will see that you have the right now to go ahead and change that into code. Okay? Again, feel free to give me a call if I can help at all. And also, review my newsletters that I have out there. Look forward to seeing you in the near future. Hopefully during these crazy times, if you have like a conference or a institute, even a chapter meeting, feel free to give me a call. I'd be glad to come out and do a training session for you. Hope everyone's doing well, and you have a great day. Thank you very much for taking the time to check out this video. Bye now.